Hello you gorgeous people out there and welcome back to another video on the Rocket Shop. My name is Philip and today we are doing a bit of spaceflight news all around some new discoveries on SpaceX's Raptor engine production. SpaceX is currently aiming towards the 1st of July for the first orbital flight attempt of Starship. Well, that will likely not happen in July, considering the current progress at the orbital launch site, which will take at least 3 more months to be completed. But apart from the readiness of the ground support equipment required for an orbital flight, there's another limiting factor restricting the launch activity: the speed of Raptor engine production. The initial booster that we knew as BN3 has been redesignated as BN2 since the original BN2 was never completed or didn't came even into existence. The second fully assembled booster will enter its final production stages shortly after the hopefully successful testing of the BN2.1 test tank. But to take off into the skies with the Starship on top, BN2 needs a total of 29 Raptor engines. Additionally, SpaceX requires another 3 sea-level Raptor engines for Starship serial number 20, along with 3 vacuum Raptors for the first orbital flight attempt. That means a total of 35 engines have to be produced for just one flight. And if that wasn't enough, SpaceX will likely have to produce another 35 engines for the second flight as well. Why do we know that? Well, a few weeks ago some FCC documents were leaked showing the flight path of Starship's first orbital mission. What we can see is that Starship SN20 will perform an orbital re-entry and later a powered splashdown near Hawaii, slightly something similar to what the Falcon 9 boosters performed back when SpaceX began to try to land those things. But although BN2 is supposed to perform a touchdown instead of a splashdown about 8 minutes into flight, it will likely just fall into the water as well because the landing spot is in the Gulf of Mexico and due to the lack of landing legs, a drone ship touchdown can be ruled out. But how many Raptors are already finished and how fast is the production really? Will the cadence of Raptor rollout delay the first orbital missions even more? Between the first engine tests back in 2016 and the medium altitude test flights of SN15, there was a total of a bit more than 60 engines produced. That means the production lines in SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, rolled out around 1 engine per month on average. But the production sped up in the last months, with 1 engine being produced in around 1 week, shortly before SN15's flight. Taking this rate of production into consideration, there may be around 12 Raptors and at least 3 vacuum Raptors laying around somewhere. We haven't seen any engines with serial numbers for a few months, so we could only assume which serial number of Raptor engines was the most recent one. Turns out, we were all wrong. Many of us thought that the engine production rate could be the number one limiting factor for orbital test flights due to the production of 35 engines taking many months. But back on the 30th of May, Elon Musk tweeted that Raptor engine production is nearing 1 engine per 48 hours, which is a way higher rate than most of us expected. Instead of multiple months, SpaceX would just need about 70 days to complete all the engines for an orbital flight. But what we don't know is for how long production was working on this rate. Everything Elon's tweet is telling us is that the Raptor production is getting faster and faster, and not how many Raptors there actually are. And then, on the 8th of June, another picture was dropped on Twitter, this time by Gary Blair, who is a local resident of McGregor, Texas, and does flyovers over SpaceX's engine testing facility there. In this facility, every single Raptor engine undergoes testing to verify its readiness for flight operations. Raptor engines have serial numbers, and those serial numbers are often printed on the side of the engine nozzle in big white letters, so we can see what serial number they are. But in the last months, all engines visible on such aerial photographs were either not numbered or the serial number wasn't visible from the photographer's perspective. But the engine Gary Blair spotted on one of the horizontal test stands had a white serial number printed on its nozzle. And although the resolution of the photo is too low to read the number with certainty, we can see what is most likely a 131. The engine on the test stand is engine number 131. And that came as a surprise to many of us. I personally believe SpaceX had produced maybe around 10 engines since the flight of SN15, which flew with the engines number 54, 61, and 66. 10 engines since then would equal the newest Raptor to be around SN80. But SpaceX seems to have produced more than 50 engines more than we all thought. They could have up to 80 flight-ready Raptors in storage, enough for 2 entire orbital flight vehicles and some engines left over. But we can't tell the real number of engines with certainty. There are multiple factors influencing the total number that we don't know. For example, we have no clue whether the numbering of those engines is complete and no numbers were left out, since we have no confirmation of serial numbers 67 to 130 even existing. They probably do because we have seen multiple engines being tested over the last months, but we can't tell if all of them existed. And we don't know whether the vacuum version of the Raptor counts into the main number scheme or the vacuum variant has a separate numbering. And we have no clue if SpaceX has decommissioned some of the older engines that were still working, and we also don't know if SN131 is even the newest engine in existence, and so on. There are many factors with the potential to change the total number of Raptors we know of so dramatically. In fact, there could be anything between 30 to over 100 engines laying around somewhere. Independent of the actual number of engines, SpaceX almost certainly has enough engines to assemble the first booster and Starship designated to go to orbit. The only limiting factor left is the launch site itself. If the progress on that site goes on like it did in the last weeks, it is already nearing its completion and therefore we are getting closer to the first orbital flight attempt of Starship. I'm quite sure it will happen somewhere in late summer to early autumn this year. Raptor engine production has been ramping up dramatically and isn't the major problem anymore. In fact, SpaceX may even have more engines than rockets for them to be used on. So future orbital vehicles could already be outfitted with their engines. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did so, why not smash the like button and subscribe to the Rocket Hub? I'd appreciate it a lot. We see ourselves next week with another episode, and until then, I'm out. Cheers!